What is up, Bat Family? Welcome to a brand new The Batman video. In today's video, I am so excited to make this because this is the first proper discussion series video post the movie. So the reason why that's kind of a big deal is now that I can get into any kind of burning question, theory, speculation, or just, you know, what the discussion series pertains to, just given the context of everything we just saw in the movie. So you guys have sent in a bunch of burning questions, and that's the reason why I call them burning is because I somewhat said this could be like an extended spoiler review. There may be some things, despite me going on for over an hour in both non-spoiler and spoiler reviews, that I might have forgot about. But not only that, there's just so much room coming out of seeing the almost 3-hour movie now that gives the previous discussion series videos that we had that much more of a rocket thruster on them, because obviously we're getting a sequel, we're getting spin-off shows, we are getting a Batverse, and yeah, let's just say that there's just so much to talk about. So I've got loads and loads and loads of questions to go through. Please do not worry if I didn't get to your question in today's video. Do not take it personally. It's just, you know me, I talk for a long time, give each question that anyone submits that I've decided to screenshot. You know, I found it obviously very interesting, quite a bit of allocated time in the video, and we will get through them slowly but surely. I'm gonna shut up now. Just again, thanks to anyone who helped me get to 100k. You might see the little verified badge by my name now. We're finally official BobaTalks now. I've ordered the play button. We are doing the 100k video in due course, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Starting with Arman Ali's question here. So do I think that Penguin will ever be the main villain in the future sequels of The Batman? Or do you think he'll just stay as a sort of side villain with more emphasis on his spin-off series? Congrats on 100k as well. Love your videos. Thank you, Arman. So this is an interesting question because it could go, I mean, as with any question we get into here, with my intuitive thoughts on the subject matter, it could go a multitude of different ways, I suppose you could say. And again, if I'm talking a million miles per hour, yeah, this would be why, coffee. But no, yeah, so it's such an interesting question because, you know, just assuming that it is a trilogy, every time I say that, people are like, no, stop saying that. I want 6 movies, like something like Star Wars. I mean, technically it has 9 now. And I just can't assume that because this is a lot of work. Like, so much work went into the Batman in of itself, let alone imagining a sequel and then a sequel after that. 3 movies, a trilogy. Can you imagine Matt Reeves helming a 4th, a 5th, and a 6th film? Obviously, directors could give it off to someone else. That usually happens when you tackle long-standing movies like this, and that's possible as well. But then, even if Matt Reeves gave that off to someone else, I know I'm getting into a bit of a tangent now, but this is why this will fit into with what I'm about to say with future villains. You still have then the actors to consider. Like, even though Rob loves doing this, it was a relentless shoot for him. And does he want to do 6 of them? Like, that's a lot of time to dedicate to. So I'm not guaranteeing anything, but I think it's safe to assume for now, for the sake of this question that Arman has sent in about villains, or just, you know, Penguin being the main villain, that is 3 movies. So with 3 movies, you have to kind of think, if Penguin's going to be a main villain, which I'm not saying that he won't be, but you kind of have to think, okay, that's the second movie. We've only got one more where you can really give another of Batman's rogues gallery to shine. So one thing I've echoed throughout my live streams recently, because, you know, I do recommend turning notifications on for the channel, guys, those who are subscribed, because we get into a lot of Batman talk in those live streams as well. And I often get asked about villains, and I do feel like Reeves' formula will probably always be to highlight somebody in the main antagonist role. So, like, let's just put center stage there, Edward Nashton's Riddler. But you still had these other characters, like the anti-hero-esque kind of Selina. I mean, I don't really want to include her in the antagonist lineup, especially not in this movie. But you still had her as a character. But as for villains, if you will, you then had Falcone. You then had Penguin. Like, it was quite spread out in a very interesting, unique way there. Yet, you still had the main villain poised up to be that of the Riddler. So I do feel like what Reeves is going to do to try and accommodate as much as he can in future movies have a similar setup. So for argument's sake, this isn't me saying the second movie's villain is going to be this person, but let's say Mr. Freeze will take that of the center stage, poised up to be the main villain of the second movie. But then, instead of 9 minutes of screen time, as Colin Farrell said, or whatever he actually had, don't quote me there, in the first movie, he has maybe like 23 minutes in the second movie, of which has been helped facilitated by his rise to power in the bridging series from the Batman 1 to the sequel, the Batman 2, the Penguin spin-off, where maybe he has a lot more power. His rise to power, as the synopsis or the premise of the show is, maybe fills in that gap as Kingpin, taking over Falcone's. You get what I'm trying to say. Without going on for this for too much longer, I am not ruling out that Penguin could be poised to be that of the main villain, like the Riddler, or my example just a minute ago, Mr. Freeze. But I wouldn't be surprised if, at the same time, considering we're getting a Penguin series, that will facilitate his rise to that of the Kingpin, the grand kind of respect that Falcone held, with the kind of no man's land-esque, I'm not outright saying that, but you know, kind of like National Guard coming in, it's a shithole now, it's flooded everywhere. You get my idea there. Like, it's gonna be a bit of a war zone. Penguin will be there, but bottom line, when you have, and this comes back to the 3 movies assumption we're going with here, you only have so much time to bring in something that hasn't necessarily been done before. And that's something that Matt Reeves has said that he would like to do. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not going to do villains that have been done before, because you can still do that, but do it in your own fresh way. Like, for example, Riddler has been done before, but Matt Reeves did him again. Granted, it's been a long time, and it was very different. So you could still do Mr. Freeze, right? It's just, it wouldn't be very grounded, but yet fantastical in the ways that I'm sure you've heard me talk about before, and knowing the questions we'll probably get into at some point in this video. So the latter is of what you say, or do you think he'll just stay as sort of a side villain with more emphasis on his spin-off series? I think the spin-off series will ultimately get him to a Kingpin-esque state, his rise to power. I don't know if that means, though, that Matt Reeves will give him the Riddler role, or the main center stage role. But it's important to remember that doesn't mean that he won't be a very big threat to Batman and what's going on in Gotham. I just do feel like Reeves will want to maybe... I don't know, because I feel like he, as much as he will still explore Oz, aka the Penguin, in the main movies, like the sequel, the second movie, and the third, he's got his own spin-off. So I do feel like maybe as a result, even though that will put him into a place of where he could be a big, poised up main center stage villain, like that of Paul Dano in the first movie, it's probably going to be reserved for somebody else that he's thinking of bringing in, whether that's Hush, whether that's Mr. Freeze, whether that's somebody else. I don't know. But you get my line of thinking there. I always feel like Matt Reeves, as I was going back to with the beginning of this question, is going to make his movies multifaceted in terms of like this ensemble, if you will, of villains. Now, sometimes in shows and movies, people complain about that because there's not nearly enough development with characters, or it's too flooded. So as a result, it's a bit overcrowded. And again, not too much leaned into development with certain individuals you would have liked to have seen. But I feel like if you do it right, with like what Matt Reeves did with Falcone in this first movie, Oz, Riddler, you had Selina in there, you had quite a lot of players. You can, if you do it well, they all complement the world very well as per their arc in the movie, and obviously you got the most screen time with the main villain, let's say Mr. Freeze in the second movie. Oz has a bit more screen time, and whatever else is going on, let's say Harvey Dent takes over from Gil Coulson, he will maybe have that of Colin Farrell's Oz's screen time, 9 to 11 minutes or whatever in the first movie, and you don't feel like, okay, there wasn't enough of him, or maybe I would have liked to have seen more, but that's kind of maybe an intention, you know, it's just nicely complemented there. So I feel like Matt Reeves is always going to bring in the rogues gallery and larger-than-life Gotham characters in this universe in a very intelligent yet nicely marinated way, and not just plastering. So as this long rambled answer as I always go on for with these questions, will he ever be a main villain? Yes, but arguably no at the same time, because Oz doesn't have to be in the center stage to be who he is, and that is the Penguin. I just don't know if they're going to dedicate a whole movie to him, because I do feel like he can be a problem in of himself, whilst also bringing in, I don't know, someone like Mr. Freeze as the main advertised antagonist. But hey, just disclaimer, I could be completely wrong. The Rise to Power series, The Penguin on HBO Max, that is going to get, you know, several episodes, and obviously is going to show Oz's rise at the end of the movie to the start of the second movie. That's why I say it bridges the films. That might be all setting him up as the main villain. And then you can still bring in these other characters and, you know, dab them in there, here and there in the ways I've just aforementioned. So, Comics Animations 18 says, so Boba, considering the movie ended with a bittersweet ending of having Gotham flooded, could the sequel be a No Man's Land adaptation, with Gotham being closed off and maybe paving the way for more Batman villains to emerge and take over the city? Congratulations on 100k, you've really earned it. Thank you so much, man. So when we're all saying like No Man's Land, I don't think it is actually No Man's Land. It's just so easy to draw those comparisons. Got looting, it's kind of, I think, I can't remember accurately. I don't know if it is shut off. Maybe it is, like maybe you could have the National Guard saying like, okay, we're not really accepting new people coming in. Like, I mean, look at the place, it's flooded. I think maybe you'd have to apply to get in if you had family there to bring resources, but it's not straight up No Man's Land. But in essence, it's certainly got parallels, like the vacuum of power, what kind of, you know, bad characters this could bring out in Gotham. Like, literally, the Penguin series will most likely lean into the state of Gotham being flooded and Falcone being gone, seizing the power. Like, this is a power grab. As Selina and Batman acknowledge, it's going to get worse before it gets better, but Batman's going to be there. Your question does raise things I've already been thinking about, and I'm sure a lot of us as well, you know, considering the movie ended with this, you know, could it be a No Man's Land adaptation? I don't think it will be an actual adaptation of No Man's Land. That's normally a bit more savage, even though Gotham is, as we see in those ending shots, you see like where the mayor had his memorial, like it's completely flooded in those areas, and that's going to take a long time to recoup from that. However, I don't think it'll be as I keep saying, the word really is savage as No Man's Land, because that is really quite a state. However, you could even liken it even more in certain ways. That is, I would say it's loosely inspired. Like, for example, this Batman movie, if you get the graphic novel collection, it's inspired by, I would say, 3 main ones, and that is Batman Year One. You can very easily see the inspirations there. The Long Halloween, very self-explanatory, with the mysterious holiday killer, how this is inspired by that, and Batman Ego with the psychology of Bruce Wayne. So yeah, you could say it's inspired by No Man's Land, and I think it's interesting to consider, like, could this bring out, even if they're not mainly featured, or it's just something that is loosely, you know, a gang, you know, tackled Oz's claim to power in the series, and like they're the Black Mask gang or something like that. That'd be really cool if Roman Sionis comes out the works. That doesn't set up Roman Sionis to be like the main villain of the second or third movie, but I do feel like it could pave way for more villains to come out for sure, especially as Batman is being heavily advertised now as the vigilante that saved a lot of people, Gothamites, if you will, citizens, and it kind of sets that up. That's the whole point, as what Reeves has even articulated in interviews, that with Selina saying it's going to get worse before it gets better, and Matt Reeves saying there's always trouble brewing in Gotham. When he took out that ending scene with Riddler and Joker in Arkham, it didn't actually kind of emphasize Catwoman's comment there at the end with Batman as well as it did as including that scene. Because when you include that scene with Barry Keoghan's Joker, or John Doe at this point, because he hasn't got the moniker, just like Selina hasn't got the moniker of Catwoman yet, albeit they embody the characteristics very evidently, it shows you so much, like, because we've just seen it. We've seen that trouble is brewing. Gotham loves a comeback story. So yeah, for sure, like with Gotham being in a dire state, it's kind of like, as Matt Reeves said, it's the best thing in a way that Gotham's kind of in a moment had in many years. Falcone, the guy who's been practically the mayor for the last 20 years, as Kenzie, if I'm remembering correctly, said, it's like finally the shadow has been lifted over Gotham. But then, unfortunately, just kind of like a storm, how it clears up in Florida or whatever, with my weird analogies, another one will be coming in, and arguably this is the beginning. It really is. This is even though Barry Keoghan's Joker is still in Arkham, he's been put in there in Batman Year One, it's kind of like a melancholy feeling. It's bittersweet. Gotham has got out of the corruption. I mean, it's always going to be corrupt, but you know what I mean. Gil Coulson, corrupt, gone. Mayor, corrupt, gone. Gil Coulson being gone means, oh, shiny Harvey Dent, probably. The kind of white knighty kind of figure we might have a little bit before he falls into Two-Face madness, obviously. Oh, Bella Real, actually someone who gives a shit about Gotham and will be trying to help, and I'm sure Bruce Wayne will be getting into a little bit of philanthropy with all of that as well. So you can see it's getting better, but then it's like, oh, the rogues gallery are slowly but surely coming in. And that's what I love about this. It's like Batman is necessary. He has to be there to kind of maintain the balance in the Force but at the same time, his presence kind of encourages it at the same time. You know, I'm rambling at this point, as always, but most certainly, I don't know if they would take over this city. I really don't know about that, but I do feel like the Gotham flooding, the No Man's Land-esque state that we have at the end of the movie will be carrying over into the second film. We're going to see that heavily explored in the Penguin series, but I don't expect, I don't expect the floods to be completely like, oh, gone, completely gone, completely gone. But by the time the second movie picks up with that new monologue we're going to get at the beginning, you can be damn sure about that. Batman will be addressing the state of things. He might even say, like, the Penguin is taking Falcone's spot. I'm not going to come up with a monologue right now, but you get my vibe there. There could be Easter eggs that we'll see and nods in the Penguin series to Roman Sionis or other villains, but don't expect, oh, Mad Hatter's here. Oh, Scarecrow's here. Oh, like this, that, and the other is all here. We're going to have to wait and see how that blossoms and how Matt Reeves plans to kind of take opportune moments with opportune characters that could come as a result of the end of the Batman #1 with Riddler's flooding. But next question from the GD Matt Man: do you think Robert will make an appearance in any of the Max series? And if so, do you think that they can use the shows along with the movies to finally give us a proper Batman/Joker relationship? Respect to all who have come before, but with Joker always being used as a one-off villain, we never truly have seen the relationship explored in live action. So another interesting one here with regards to this, because we've been talking about this for a long time, because arguably the GCPD series was announced, I think, at that first DC Fandom in 2020. So I've always been asked about, will Rob or people like Jeffrey Wright be appearing in these series? Yes and no, and maybe, like, for example, we were going to get the GCPD series, but it's no longer happening. If you want my full updates on that, click in the cards above. We addressed the Arkham series, how the GCPD has now evolved into a dedicated Arkham horror-esque series. So if we were going to get the GCPD series, I still choose to believe that even though we would have got Jeffrey Wright, it still would have been following another character. So it would have occasionally maybe had Jeffrey Wright in a recurring role, not a regular. So with Rob Pattinson, it's an interesting thing, because I feel like when we have the Penguin series, are we going to have him having an appearance in that? Because arguably it seems as though it's going to be happening to facilitate this kind of bridge to the first movie to the second movie, especially with how that is so well and opportunistically going to tell Oz's rise to power. Get back on point here, you would expect to see Batman try and keep tabs, right? But I do feel like you could maybe refer to Pattinson's Batman and role. And I know this is within the universe, so by all means, there's no limitations on the character to be like, oh, he has to be kept as a shadowy figure, like they do in HBO Max's Titans. Or, like, yes, granted, they use Batman in Gotham's finale, but for the whole 3/4 of that finale, he was a shadow until they zoomed in on him. It's like they said, you can only get 22 seconds of showing Batman on screen. But with this, you could argue, oh, there's no limitations. But then again, there's working things out with Rob, like with contracts. How much are we going to use him? Are we really? So I don't know. I don't think this is a Batman story. So I think they're going to intelligently do it that Batman has his hands so full, they could refer to how they've run into, or like Oz is like, we need to be careful of vengeance because he busted our operation last week. I don't fully know there, but I wouldn't expect Robert Pattinson to be in this as a regular. I wouldn't expect him to really be as a recurring role. I think he could be referred to. I'm not ruling out that he could appear. It's just, I really don't want anyone having any expectation that we're going to see the Batman after the first movie in the Penguin series. I feel like it's more likely we're going to have to wait to see him in the second movie. But I do feel like it'd be really badass if they do pull an appearance out of him somehow or in some way. But if you do that and Oz just keeps doing dodgy things throughout the whole series like he's going to do, this is the Penguin HBO Max series here, after all, talking about his rise to power, there's no excuse as to why, if you involve Batman, like, why wouldn't he be back night after night after night, episode after episode? So that's a bit of a crease they need to iron out here that I can't really gauge the full extent of what excuse and ways they'll come up with. Maybe it is just Bruce has got his hands full, right? So I expect lots of references, and I wouldn't rule out an appearance, but I just wouldn't rely on seeing regular Batman at all. I wouldn't, and I'm emphasizing and underlining the regular there. As for these shows alongside the movies to give us a proper Batman and Joker relationship, I would say X to doubt for now, if you know what I mean. The Arkham series, there's lots of speculation there going on with, is you know, because we don't really know the timeline right now, but with what Matt Reeves has said, it's like coming off of our movie. And you could just say, oh, in one way, he just means like coming off of our movie. We've seen Arkham. So, you know, oh, like the way we saw in that, they're going to lean into it more. That doesn't necessarily mean, just like the Penguin series, that's going to bridge the gap in terms of Arkham from the first movie to the second movie, aka meaning Riddler and Joker are in there. But then it also might mean that. It might mean, oh, it's going to be an Arkham series, but Barry's Joker and Paul Dano's Riddler are in there. Doesn't mean we're going to see him all the time. He's probably going to follow lots of other things, and I've got a whole separate video coming out as to how I feel like they can really do this series, or at least what I would like and the vision that I have, one vision at least. I wouldn't go to the extent of giving us a proper Batman-Joker relationship, though, like a Batman-Joker show or some other kind of show where we see that relationship thoroughly getting explored. I really, really don't think that... It's hard to really know there. I mean, they could, lots of theories are out there as well with like, oh, what if they could show some kind of origin with how clearly, as Matt Reeves has said, Barry Keoghan's John Doe, aka Joker, has had an interaction with Batman, because in that deleted scene when Batman goes to Arkham to literally get Barry Keoghan's Joker's help in profiling the Riddler because he's unnerved with these letters to him addressed to the Batman. He wants to get another killer's profiling help on that, and in a very Hannibal-lecter way, and that's the deleted scene we're yet to see, and we will be covering that on this channel. So to explore that, yeah, like he's put him away in Arkham before with whatever he was doing in Batman Year One. But I do feel like they need to tread carefully if they ever want to lean into like how he got put away. I mean, sure, we could know how Batman put him away, but like, do we, you know, what's the true origin there? I mean, I feel like that will get a bit rid of some of the ambiguity there. Does he actually have a name? He is unseen Arkham prisoner, and I've always said that Stanley Merkel is indeed a cover role for the larger role, and lo and behold, I was right in terms of how he is, you know, the unseen Arkham prisoner, aka the Joker, right? But he's had a congenital disease. This is what causes him to smile. But does that mean that his name is known? We really don't know. Is his name Stanley Merkel and he's got the congenital disease? Is it kind of like a Jack Napier situation and where he has an identity? I really don't know. I'd like to think that he got put away killing people, but he doesn't have any records for birth. Maybe because of his disease, he got disowned. I don't know why, you know, from his mother, and he's had to grow up in never having a firm identity as an orphan as well, because there seems to be a bit of an orphan kind of, you know, theme going on with, you know, Penguin, arguably, Selina, Bruce, and Riddler, and how they all go their own ways. It's interesting how you can start off from a similar point, but all diverge and go down your own paths. And Joker had a very dark reaction, as Matt Reeves said, to his congenital disease that, as the man who laughs, limits him to always smile. And a lot of people are making, oh, that's just like Arthur. No, it's really not. I get what people are saying. He has like a neurology kind of thing going on there with how Arthur Fleck can't help but laugh sometimes. But that's very different to, because sometimes he can just not laugh. And another way to put it is, Arthur's not always smiling. This kid has a congenital disease where he just doesn't stop smiling. Imagine having your muscles being to a point of where they're like paralyzed in a certain way, and you can talk still. Like, imagine smiling as wide as you can still talk when you're doing it. Imagine that. And also, I do believe this congenital disease has allowed his skin to be a bit the way it is in the end of the scene. It allows for his hair. We will get into that in a later question, but I'm getting off topic now. I don't expect this character to get fully delved into with a Batman-Joker relationship. To really go back to what I was getting into, there was a lot of theories that the GCPD series, as it was set during Batman Year One, could have explored how Barry Keoghan's character was put into jail, right? Or at least Arkham State Hospital, Arkham Asylum. Because as we know from Matt Reeves, it happened then. In Batman Year One, he was put away sometime during that time. But I just don't think they're gonna really lean into that. You know, I've been rambling quite a bit now and tangenting, but I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be done in the same way as a one-off villain. I think there is more potential for Barry there. Maybe we could even see him as, going back to my Arkham comments, the series could pertain to all different kinds of storylines and arcs and plots that maybe all interconnect at a certain episode. But that doesn't mean we have to follow him every episode in Arkham, but every now and again, maybe as a special role, a special appearance, we can have him, you know, in it. It's so unknown right now, so many ideas, but trying to ground it in realistic expectations, I would be very surprised if they were like, okay, Barry Keoghan is the main character of the Arkham series. That would be pretty insane, and I doubt that, but that doesn't mean I'm I'm ruling out appearances. Okay, so next question's from Leo Hallen, and a lot of people ask this. So, alright, so it was revealed that Carmine Falcone was pulling all the strings in Gotham, but do you think that there is still a chance that he was working for the court and they had him in their pocket all this time? I only watched this movie once, but I remember something suspicious that Gil Colson said about it all being part of something bigger or something like that. I hope he was referring to the Court of Owls. I think there's another question here. Yeah, so we have the Scarlet Bird of Prey, and I really don't blame people for thinking this, and you could probably tell where I'm going to go with this even by saying that. Do you think that the whole system that Gil mentioned before he died that could kill his whole family was the Court of Owls? I personally think it was something really interesting. It would be cool to see. I also hope to see Pattinson's Batman clear up more of his technique in terms of his fighting, as I'd like to see him fight more skilled individuals like Deathstroke or even Talons. Love your content, and you may remember me from Twitter. I do. And Instagram. Glad you're 100k, brother. You're Robin. Thank you so much. So let's answer the Court of Owls stuff. I get what people were saying now, where we had Gil just being like, oh, you don't understand, like it's so much bigger than you can imagine and things like that. I get how fans want to read into this, and I can't guarantee you for an absolute certainty that this isn't the case, but I do honestly believe that, because there was a big conspiracy going on. We had the mayor, the DA, we had frickin' Carmine Falcone, Maroney, we had lots of people, the commissioner, all dipping their hands in the Gotham Renewal Fund to launder money, and then we learned that Falcone got greedy. He wanted more. Falcone. Excuse me there. And so he set up a deal to expose Maroney, and the drug bust happened. So what Gil was really worried about there, and what that was emphasizing, is that thing in of itself is still, as he said, so huge. It really is. Like, that is so big. It's so much bigger than you can imagine. It's the whole city. It was the whole city. It was the commissioner, the mayor, just the DA. That's everyone connected. That's insane. But as a result, you know, fans being fans, I cannot blame them at all. Speculate and theorize. That could really mean, you know, are so much bigger than you can imagine. Even above all them, it's the Court of Owls. Look, I can't tell you that that isn't the case, but I do think sometimes we get carried away. I mean, myself included sometimes. I'm not knocking down anyone's theories here. But really, if you look at it, even though what you're saying here, or what anyone is saying about how beyond that it could be the court, because it's so much bigger than you can imagine, that makes sense. But it also, if we kind of temper down into a realistic scenario, that line from Gil Colson saying it's so much bigger than you can imagine, etc., just abbreviating the line there, it also just completely applies to how much people, Batman himself, like a lot of people who weren't in the know, had no idea that the city's largest were completely ruled by someone like Carmine, right? Like that line applies to that. Like, I want to emphasize again, the mayor, the commissioner, the DA, and more, like the very kind of pillars of the city that make the biggest decisions were all in cahoots to kind of, well, it's all corrupt. That doesn't inherently mean Court of Owls. So easy to be like, oh yeah, but the Court of Owls were the ones sanctioning them. But all I'm saying is, if we look at it very objectively, even though I can't invalidate your theories, Gil Colson's line doesn't have to necessarily pertain to something even bigger, right? But then I also see that a lot of people like to bring in... Okay, so let's rule that out. I think for now, I would say that it's not Court of Owls connected. And yes, I know there's comments saying, oh, you know, Robert Pattinson still hopes there's something like that going on. That's Robert Pattinson as a fan. I just want to put that out there. He doesn't have like any proper say in like what really is going to go on with Matt Reeves and the writer, like deciding what's going on there. That's just more of like him being one of us as a fan. So for now, I would say logistically, Gil Colson's line very much so does pertain to how kind of screwed up it was that the biggest players in Gotham, and it was so much bigger than what you can imagine, and his whole family would get killed. Yeah, to keep it. Yeah, they would do that to protect what Falcone was doing. That doesn't inherently mean court. But again, lots of people are also saying that there's something else going on with what Falcone said before he was brought into the light by Batman, saying, you know, listen, anything I've done or anything whatever will go to my grave. Terribly abbreviating the line there. But what some people are saying as a result of that is anything that he knows or anything he's done die with him or whatever. That could mean the Court of Owls, you know, who he was working for, anything he knows to do with that. Like, I get what people are doing there, and I can't deny that because I don't know for a fact. And I love to get carried away with theories. As you know here, this is what these series are kind of about. But even then, I just say like that line to me just said like, well, Falcone's a dodgy man, and anything and everything he's done, whether like that could mean like he actually did hire Joe Chill or a thug to kill the Waynes, or whether it was, just a random street thug. I'm just saying, like, he's done a lot of dodgy things, so no matter what he's done, he's not going to say shit because he was on his way to the police station, and he will die, and ironically after that, he did die. That doesn't mean that he was the puppet, because obviously Falcone, as he set up the deal and then everyone was kind of working for him. Like, he was the mayor for the last 20 years. So do you see what I mean? Like, people were saying as a result of that, and his last comment, that even though he was the main pillar head, pulling all of everyone's strings, even though at one point everyone was kind of working together to, like, milk the Gotham Renewal Fund, and then that drug bust happened, and really Falcone had something on everyone then, so he was the top dog, and he was really a puppet for the larger conspiracy of the Court of Owls. That could still be possible, but I still just take that line as, no, it's just Falcone being like, or Falcone saying, I've done dodgy things, but I'm not going to say shit. Like, I get how easy it is to get carried away, and how cool and how still realistic that there could be an underlying thing with the court, but I still do believe that with Riddler exposing all this, he would have somehow in some way, it's just like, if you found all that out, surely you would bring in the Court of Owls. And even if not, some might say, but Boba, no, not really. The Court of Owls are really, 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 really secret. They could have been the ones pulling Carmine Falcone strings. And I would just be like, well, yeah, but then, even though it'd be a really cool story to get into of even larger corruption, I do think there's something to take into account that not many are properly, with whatever villains are going to come next, whatever things going to come next. I'm not saying they're going to get rid of detective stuff. I'm sure, let's just say Mr. Freeze comes in, they're going to be like, okay, so what's this? There's some crime scene with a lot of frozen stuff left behind, and Bruce tries to figure it out, takes some samples back, maybe gets into his chemistry competency and whatnot. That's still all going to be there, I bet. But, like, to retread, like, a corruption mystery, I just don't know if they're going to somewhat mirror or closely parallel certain things of the first movie. I feel like if you do the Court of Owls, as awesome as it will be, and I'm not saying this is going to be the case, maybe they will prove me kind of wrong with what I'm saying here, but I do feel like they just want to lean into another villain. I feel like Reeves would want to capitalize on something else instead of there being another, like, this will be like another exposing corruption story. And again, with what I was getting into earlier, let's just assume there's 3 movies, you only have so much time to kind of what can I do and leave my stamp behind with Batman? Do we really do another layer of corruption, even though Gotham will always be corrupt? Or do we now, after doing a big corruption piece, lean into maybe, yeah, let's bring in Harvey Dent, let's not even make him Two-Face maybe until the 3rd movie, but Harvey throughout the 2nd movie, but then there's a big villain with Mr. Freeze maybe. Again, he's just the easiest example. I'm not saying that he will be. Bruce and Harvey become friends, but it's just this, I just feel like you're losing a lot of opportunities if you really do just be like, okay, Court of Owls, we are locked in to even more corruption. I don't know about that. So I think I'm going to make this the last question, only because we've been going on for a while now, and I've got tons more interesting ones to get into, so don't worry, there will be another episode of this soon. Kind of annoyed that I didn't get some of them, because there was some of the biggest questions coming out of the movie. But either way, Mega Drive 14 says, Boba, who do you think the main boss is for the drops business? I think it's either Joker or Scarecrow. So this has always been a very interesting theory, and some backstory context here is into the fandom. A lot of fans felt like, oh, the GCPD series, of which we knew was going to be set during Batman Year 1. It looks like maybe a bit of a Red Hood, and maybe as a result, before anyone properly subscribed to Barry Keoghan being the Joker, or John Doe at least for now, they could have leaned into his comments, especially around the time people were using this as of the end of the movie even. What is it they say? One day you're on top, the next you're a clown. And maybe like he was on top of the drops or whatever. And maybe considering he was put away during Batman Year 1, GCPD series is going to be set, was going to be set during Batman Year 1 because it's no longer happening. People were just going in theories that, it could have been a Red Hood gang because, and it's like Reeves' Batverse adaptation of that. But I've always, as much as I enjoyed those theories, never was fully sure about that. I also like to entertain Scarecrow because very classical Scarecrow designs also come across like a little bit of a hood with that, and he even smiles, and with per the drops, it's got little bits of like rips and crooked aspects to the smile like that of a Scarecrow smile, and that always seemed really interesting to me as well. But not only that, the reason why I think that any kind of Barry Keoghan Joker aspect is taken out of the drops now, at least, I'll hold my hands up if I'm wrong, please do give me a perspective. It's just as of what I understand coming out the movie, what we have with the history lesson is that Maroni, the drug bust, Maroni was pushing the drops, right? I'm pretty pretty damn sure about that was kind of his thing he was pushing. But the Gotham history with what we learned, with how Falcone came up on top, is that after the Waynes died, you know, we had the DA, the commissioner, the mayor, Falcone, Maroni, the kingpins, if you will. Or Falcone wasn't at the time, you know, it was more Maroni. They were all dipping their fingers in the perfect money laundering excuse that was the Gotham renewal. It was perfect for all of them. But then we had the drug bust because Falcone made a deal, which as a result made him have everyone in his pocket. But we had everyone eager, like the DA, the commissioner, the mayor, and everyone want their payday or just promotions or whatever, and he backstabbed Maroni by setting up a drug bust deal, right? As a result, Kinsey said, because of that, he had everyone in his pocket and kind of thing. Falcone has been the mayor for the past 20 years, you know? And it's just like, well, that's a long time. And even if, you know, after the Waynes and the backstabbing happened within a couple of years or so, the drug bust that is with Maroni, well, what does that mean? That means Maroni was not only dealing with drops, but that means that was around 15 to 20 years ago. So apply that to Barry's, you know, or the Joker, he would be like 9 years old around about that time. So I really don't think, again, I'm not saying this is the case, but I'm pretty sure Maroni was pushing drops back then. So this has been like, it's not ancient history, but I think the drops have been a growing narcotic-y kind of problem in Gotham for an increasing addiction amongst the citizens for the past 15-ish years, if you know what I mean. I don't think the drops, if I understand this correctly, have been a very, 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 very recent thing. I think it's just really popular now to the point of where the Gotham Health Department have got the billboard ads saying stop drops and things like that. And it's being pushed and pushed and pushed by even, you know, people within the frickin' higher positions where once it was Maroni's thing, drug bust happened, oh, now everyone's just getting in on the drops business. But if you think about it, if we are understanding, or if I'm understanding this correctly, that happened all the way back then, which was, as Kinsey said, he's been the mayor for 20 years. And that sounded like after the Maroni drug bust. So, like, you know, again, apply that to Joker, it kind of rules him out. But that doesn't rule out the possibility of Jonathan Crane. Now, some people are like, oh, wait, what? That doesn't make sense. This doesn't give you fear or anything. It doesn't have to. This could be like the very early chemical kind of experimentations that Scarecrow does. He put a little Scarecrow hoodie-esque kind of logo, crooked Scarecrow smile, and it makes people, as what we saw, a bit paranoid, or it's kind of like fear in a way, but intoxicated to an extent, right? Again, it could just be an Easter egg there, one day to be developed upon with, and this has been a long-standing theory, like maybe it's Jonathan Crane perfecting fear toxin, but this is the most beta alpha version of it. But again, the most important takeaway with this is if indeed the Maroni drug bust did surround drops, then I don't see how that pertains to Joker being on top one day and how, like, he was the one making the drops. And, you know, it does pertain to his origin with the Red Hood gang, and that's why it looks like a Red Hood kind of thing. No, I think if I'm right with the Maroni drug bust being like, okay, the drops have been around for 15 to 20 years, that rules out Barry's John Doe, and as a result, if anything, if you want to get more Rogues Gallery-tied connection to this, because there are Mad Hatter theories as well, well, it makes more sense to me, and how that's like a Scarecrow hood, maybe. But I don't know. Ultimately, I'm not saying anything for sure, but I'm just asking you to maybe let's put our heads together with this and like, okay, so if I'm right with the Maroni drug bust thing, that would make Joker a little kid, you know, Barry, which I do think they're going for that more youthful vibe anyway with this Joker compared to that of like Heath Ledger's casting. I doubt he was like 10 years old being like, hee 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 hee, like, you know, here's a drop thing, right? If anything, it makes more sense for it to be a little, not even a fear gas, but just Jonathan Crane. I don't know, being Jonathan Crane. But I still am not fully subscribed to that because it's like, okay, was Jonathan Crane really just creating a drug, or was he forced to create one, or was he more than happy to facilitate a drug on the streets that the mob could sell a Maroni at the time, and it could help him like be like, okay, well, this isn't working in the way I wanted to try and eliminate fear or whatever, or cause fear in a certain sense so you can overcome fear. Who knows? Who knows? You could go a billion different directions there, but the reason I say that is because the imagery can also mimic that of a very, very, very classical Scarecrow little hood. Please do correct me if I'm wrong about how long the drops could have been being dealt around Gotham. And again, it could have been a new kid on the block in terms of the drops all the way back then. And the reason why it's quite prominent in today's present day Gotham is because over the past 10 to 15 to 20 years, it just got more addictive and more citizens found out about it and it got pressed and pushed even more on the streets. But let me know your thoughts on that. Ultimately, that is today's video. And guys, I can't wait to do the next episode on this because, you know, the next questions surround Robin. What would my thoughts be for the sequel? The next Batcat scene, how could that be in future movies? Joker and Riddler alliance. You know, we've got so much more to talk about, but I talk for a long time, so hope you enjoyed this video. Again, really appreciate the support. You know, Bat content's gonna come in a variety of ways. Like I don't want to give away the full video ideas, but they're not video essays per se, but it's more like, okay, let's dive into how something could be done this way in the future and things like that. So I'm looking forward to release those. They're gonna be kind of more thought out videos, but also news and updates, of course. I've got breakdowns that I want to get into with what Matt Reeves has just discussed in videos and interviews post the movie, just interesting insights and whatnot. This is all on top of these videos as well. So again, if you're brand new here, do subscribe. What you're doing, double check if you aren't subscribed, by the way, because I always say this, a lot of people come to me saying they're not when they thought they were. So check that red subscribe button. If you made it this far in the video as well, put the hashtag with whatever comment you were going to put down in the comments below at the beginning. Hashtag mine or yours. I mean, you should understand that reference. It's when the freaking twins were like, you know, get out the way. There's going to be blood on that suit of yours. Like, mine or yours. I love that comment from Batman. And then he just punches them both in the face. But other than that, guys, I think that's everything. Follow me on Twitter. I thoroughly recommend that. I tweet a lot of my thoughts, and I guess you guys would be interested in my thoughts because you're subscribed here. I have Instagram, and I have a Discord server. Links, as always, are in the description or in the top pinned comment. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you, frickin' Bat family, in the next video. Goodbye.